All right, welcome Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit, newly reinvigorated. Got some sleep after being up for almost 2 hours straight. Talking a little bit funny on a Twitter space the other day till 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's elections. That's what it is. We live for it. We breathe it. We enjoy it. So if you like the videos, of course, folks, don't forget to like them and share them with your friends far and wide. Like and share, like and share. The best place, of course, to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. And by the way, YouTube and Rumble watchers, subscribe. Hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. All right, it is Friday Q&A. Bear with me. Laura is not here today, so it's just me scrolling through the comments, and it's going to be pretty informal towards the end of this puppy because she usually grabs them and then throws them in the comments, and I see them. So I'm going to have to do this, try to do this myself, which is always a little bit hectic. So you might as well just save most of them until the end. There's a few things I want to say real quick. Listen, I saw the multiple, I don't even know how many posts now on X, and I can see even my Twitter community, people who respect him were like, hey, have you ever invited him on the show to talk about this? I want to bring this up. It's a pretty big deal. Like Rush Limbaugh never would have, he never repeats drive-by media narrative nonsense. Okay. He just doesn't do that. It didn't. And the person who replaced him, you have Clay Travis and all these others. I mean, they fall into this category. Look, Clay is welcome to come on the show if he doesn't want me on his show, whatever, exposure. It's super competitive in this game. Very few people are like Sean Parnell and I in truth, where, you basically, rising tide lifts all boats. And you're supposed to be of a certain philosophy. And in real world, it really doesn't work out that way. Most of your favorite media personalities are pricks. All right. I don't know the guy personally. All right. But I've been watching for the last year, and he's going on and on in this tangent. And part of this show today is about Trump's bump, a big part of it. And there are people like him and others who, look, Clay, you went to the DeSantis influencer thing, dude. You lied about it and everything. And now you're repeating drive-by media narratives with either incomplete information or just misleading information. And you got a million followers listening to you when you don't know what the hell you're talking about. I've invited him on the show. If he doesn't want me to come on and embarrass him on his own show, that's fine. Or a third party can do it. And I'd be happy to school him on why the data is clear argument on the suburban vote is wrong. He's just patently wrong for many reasons. And I'm not going to give him a chance to prepare for it either, so I'm not going to roll it out. But you guys know if you've watched and have been watching for a long time. So, he's welcome to come on, civilized discussion. But I'm going to start to get a little bit harder on some of these people. This system is broken. You have the regular media, who I told you from the beginning, their business model is broken. They need advertiser revenue in order to do that. And we have advertisers, you know that. We have ads. But we're not going to BS you for a couple of bucks extra a month, all right? I mean, we're just not going to do it. But they need that advertising revenue to get rating. They need ratings to draw in those advertisers. And horse races get ratings. Scandals get ratings. Lies get ratings. Hoaxes get ratings. And unfortunately, they're not at all incentivized to tell you the truth. 100 years ago, news around this country, a lot of it was thought to be public news. No corporation was really owned by any industry or sector of the private sector, whatever. No, whatever industry, big pharma, you name it. And then, of course, there was no there's always incestuous relationships, but it wasn't this bad. Even before that, what we had was party media, and that's fine. I wish we would go back to that, frankly. What is party media? When you look back at the pamphleteers of the Revolution and beyond in the early Republic, especially after the war was over, and they were Federalists, anti-Federalists, which then rolled, of course, into the Jeffersonian Republican Party, and then they have, of course, had their own Federalists that rolled into And then Jackson comes along and gets the Democratic Party. You know how it works. They didn't pretend that they were impartial. They said, look, this is this party's point of view. Here's our argument. And then the other party said, this is our point of view. Here's the other argument. Ironically, the New York Post started as a centralized government pushing very much in the federalist mold. And now it's thought to be on the right, although it's owned by Murdoch Inc., which is a total joke. And it's not right wing at all. I mean, it hasn't been since Roger Ailes. And then the New York Times was started actually as the more limited government voice, which now got molded, of course, into just a mouthpiece of the deep state. It's kind of funny how things work, right? But back then they didn't BS anyone, even when Phillips wrote treason in the Senate in the Metropolitan to push for the passage of the 17th Amendment, one man, one vote, right? We need representation in the Senate. Nobody really was under the impression that Phillips was an impartial observer. He was making his case. Senator Aldrich being corrupt and everything. But people knew that and they weighed that and then had the argument. I am not personally incentivized to tell you the truth and to tell you what I have told you now for a year, which is how this, that this really wasn't a competitive primary, that all of these dirty things are going on. This is what people really want to do behind the scenes. It would have been in my financial interest to play around and pretend this is a horse race. We'd get more viewers on our live coverage every primary night, right? It would be a bigger deal if when we went to the stream every time we were releasing a public poll and we showed you that, oh my God, maybe there's movement here. Maybe somebody's gaining on Trump. It just never happened. It just wasn't real. So where am I going with all this? I think it's time to be harder on some of these people. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think this constantly lying to the population is healthy. I don't think it's healthy for these people to have these elevated voices and these huge populations that watch them when they don't know what they're talking about. Clay Travis has no idea what he's talking about. Go scroll through his Twitter feed for the last year and you tell me whether that's worthy of Rush Limbaugh. Whether you agree with Rush or not, there is no denying that man was always, he could see a mile down the road. He was 10 steps ahead of everybody. He saw every angle the drive-by media had, the Democratic Party had, establishments had. Didn't matter. Big farm, whatever. Every angle Rush Limbaugh could see. He was proactive. He was not reactive. And he would tell you, this is how they're getting you to react. Again, whether you liked Rush or you didn't, or you agreed with him or you didn't, there is no denying that the man had his finger on the pulse of the people that he claimed to be a voice of, that he claimed to represent. Clay Travis is none of those things. He's reactive. He's clueless. He's in a bubble. He has no idea what the pulse of the nation is. He gets tricked by every drive-by media narrative when it comes to this stuff. At least give credit from Mark Levin, who I've never had a great history with, but at least give credit to him. I was listening to him last night because I told you, I'm starting to really I'm going to take aim at some of these people. I don't think Mark is being particularly earnest, but at least he immediately pivoted. Last night, it was a love fest. Started actually Wednesday night. You know what? Now that I think about it, there are a lot of similarities between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan. Let me count the ways. There were a lot of fake conservatives who hated Ronald Reagan too. There were a lot of people out there who said Ronald Reagan was unelectable too. I mean, I just sat there and laughed the whole damn hour that I could stomach listening to it. But at least he's smart enough to realize the page is turned, time to move on. It's a great loss for the American right that there is nobody who can hold a candle. Forget about fill his shoes. There is nobody can hold a candle to Rush Limbaugh when it comes to that. And I think it's because these people, where they come from, their life experience. Where do you learn to see angles? I'll tell you how I learned to see them: on the street. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Thank God for 2016. I think I started to drift off for a little bit. I really do. And then when I was listening to the interviews of Republican voters, they reminded me where I came from. And I never got lost in the sauce like Clay and others have been lost in the sauce. I never. But I may have lost contact with both feet on the ground for, I don't know. Maybe not, because if I did truly, maybe I wouldn't have recognized what they were saying. You know, like I grew up in areas where immigration took people's jobs. Free trade hollowed out entire communities. Made huge empty eyesores of once bustling factories and warehouses where anybody could go get a job if they were laid off for a decent hourly wage. There was some people who worked there all the time, but then there was always this like backup plan. Got laid off. You know what? Suburban will hire me for $12 an hour to build storm doors and windows. It's a revolving door. They don't care. They just need them built. I can leave if I get something better. All that's gone now. So I guess I heard them because I saw that. Rush had this incredible ability to be connected with people, even though by that time he was filthy rich. He knew firsthand the dangers. You know, well, let me put it this way. Even though he was a conservative, he wasn't someone who was just for deregulation for the sake of deregulation and private sector for the, champion of the private sector for the sake of the, the private sector because they're somehow more virtuous than everybody else. They are not. And he knew that. Big Pharma is a great example, the power of Big Pharma. He understood how disgusting and evil they could be. He fell prey to it himself. Developed an addiction, just like so many men who lost their jobs in West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana, and Ohio. He knew what those people were dealing with, their families were dealing with. The big con right is disconnected. Completely and totally disconnected. And by the way, if you add to your coalition, mathematically, you didn't really lose anyone. When added people come into the electorate and it changes the vote margin for certain groups of people, that's not the same as losing people and having people abandon. That's another word he uses, you. They were just different people who came into the electorate. A lot of them. Oh, and also, they rigged the election. Does anybody else really need to hear that? I'm not talking about votes going to Guam or whatever the hell you heard from Rudy Giuliani. And I'm talking about manipulating the media. I'm talking about putting vast moratoriums across the country in battleground states on verification procedures that were state law, and doing so unconstitutionally because they didn't have the unilateral authority to do it, yet they did anyway. I'm talking about mass expansion of vote by mail, including the unsolicited aspect of vote by mail in 2020. We've gone over voter records a million times, and every new viewer, for instance, or every new subscriber on Locals, for instance, when we do a voter analysis, it never fails. We'll put it up, we'll show them, people like, how old are these people? There are like that many people who are 110 years old or above registered in that state? Yes. There are that many people with change of address flags? Yes. There are that many people who, for other reasons, are inactive or ineligible? Yes. It never fails because you don't see it until you become like a part of the community, and then you get inside access to the stuff that we see that the public can't unless you want to pay big bucks for it. And it never ceases to amaze me that so many people who come in that are new, there's always someone who says, wait, what? Right. Those people all got ballots, whether they were real, dead, moved away, or not. And we ended up with piles and piles of ballots on somebody's end table from the state of California, no longer live there. That says official ballot. Those people didn't live at that residence anymore. Even in states like Florida, even though Ron DeSantis likes to go on and on about how that didn't happen. Of course it did happen. A lot. Now, was it as bad No, because Florida had a lot of fail safes or backstops against, just completely exploiting the system. So for Clay or anyone else to wholesale accept and then regurgitate to his listeners the drive-by media narrative when clearly he doesn't know anything about what he's talking about is a disservice to those people. And thank God Rush Limbaugh cannot see it today. And that's where I'll leave it. All right, I've been asked a lot about what in the Sam hell is going on with Real Clear Politics and why they haven't updated a Reuters Ipsos poll. I don't know. The results of the Reuters Ipsos poll are significantly different this month than the last one, which you will be able to see in a second here. But it's also not being pushed the way that so many others of their polls are being pushed. And I don't know. I haven't had time to really look into it and see. I don't follow everyone's poll, monthly, whatever it may be that they release them. I just don't follow them as quickly. I like to keep my own head down. I'll glance at other people's work for sure, but I like to keep my head down, and especially when I'm polling, and not look at what other people are doing. I don't want to be influenced by it. Of course, I do look at people that I trust, and I wonder whether or not some of the findings that we gather are, I don't want to say duplicated, but like if you can see evidence that other people are seeing trends as well that are significant trends. But I don't I don't hover over the Real Clear Politics average and then click on every poll and go in every poll and deep dive. Not anymore. I just don't. We have too much of our own going on. Do know enough though when we bringing it up and talking about it. So for instance, like New Hampshire, we did because there's all this historical analogies towards John McCain in 2000. And of course, we made the argument that that was not going to happen. All right, so let's look it up because Clay and others, that's why I'm getting this all going to make sense in a second, are all trying to make it seem as if there's this huge chunk of Donald Trump's base. And by the way, they even trotted out their fake AI pollster to make this claim. AI, he did not, neither he or anyone else claiming on Twitter invented AI. And certainly they're not the first person to use artificial intelligence in polling. So if you're a new viewer right now or a new follower and you have not been with us for say 6-8 months, then you might want to go back and look at the episodes. I know who knew about AI being developed for polling long before anybody else. I shared a lot of this information with you. I was at the conference. I didn't see any of them there. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, it's just so ludicrous. These people are all trying to make this a narrative that there's this big chunk of the Republican base that won't get behind Donald Trump in the general election. And what does that mean for the general election? And of course, using Nikki Haley's vote, this one said this. The truth is, the data really doesn't support that. Most of, and again, I hate to repeat myself, but it warrants that I do, because we come on the show, we lay out these arguments that are backed up by the data, empirical evidence, and yet these people just keep regurgitating nonsense. And it's like you have to meet the nonsense with an equal or greater amount of truth. So I'm basically acting as a counterforce here for all the BS. But the truth is that Nikki Haley's voters are not really Republican voters. They're just not. And we've known this for months before any votes were even cast in Iowa. We told you this was happening. Chris Christie too, although, as it turns out, Chris Christie did not get all of Nikki Haley's voters. It appears that's not the case. If they were Republican or Republican-leaning independent, they did go for Trump, most of them. It was that other group, 40, 50, 60%, depending on a given month, that really never identified themselves as Republicans or Republican independents. Speaking of Rush, what you're seeing in the primary is Operation Chaos for real. Rush never experienced a primary where there was somebody willing to spend an exorbitant amount of money on such tiny electorates, by the way. I mean, relatively speaking, $37 million goes a very long way in New Hampshire trying to get out people to vote that don't normally vote. That's a huge amount of money, especially if applied correctly. All right. So the data just, however, just does not show that. And it also, those arguments also neglect to talk about Joe Biden's weakness and his base that is clearly unhappy with him. I'm not sure I believe this Pew Research poll. What do they got him at? 30, 33%? Pew Research basically has Joe Biden at risk of falling in the 20s. I don't know, guys. I don't know. We don't poll all adults, and well, we do, obviously, but we don't release the results. We just register voter, likely voters. That's the universe we're paying attention to. But I actually did go back in a market site and the last couple of months, look back and see whether or not Joe Biden's approval was lower among adults than it was registered voters at large. It is, but not that low. So I don't know. I'm just very skeptical of what they're finding. Is it bad? Yeah. Is it historically bad? Yeah. Is it worse than Donald Trump's was in going into his reelection in 2020? Yeah. And by the way, far worse than Barack Obama. So this argument that Obama was down and then he made a comeback, Joe Biden has a much bigger problem than Barack Obama ever did. Joe Biden is starting to look like second-term George Bush if this is real. But what we found was, for instance, the last poll, his approval rating was about 41%. Among adults, it was 38%. Prior, when there was a month where Joe Biden's approval, we found, was 38%. It was one of the worst ones we had found. It was actually just about a 1.5 less with adults. So it's tough. It's really tough in the modern era to drive a president's approval rating into the 20s. And I know that's hard for people to understand. That, like, how could you not disapprove of Joe Biden if you're, a right winger or not even right winger? I hate that word, but you're a Republican or you're Republican leaning, you're conservative, you're a Trumpist, you're a populist. It's hard to see how anyone could approve, but believe me, that's just the way this country is. Still, it's awful. And we can see it in New Hampshire. There were many, many, many Biden voters from 2020 who thought, I'm just going to vote for Nikki Haley. Not that I would vote for her in the general election, but I'm going to vote for her now because I'm not really in love with Joe Biden. And the DNC has made their choice. They're going to back him, and I don't think we can beat him. So I think I'm just going to put my vote to better use. As that one person said, this was a strategic vote. And by the way, he was not alone. Hanover Township. Let's look at this polling. Here it is. Normally, this is what's funny. Nikki Haley vowed to continue after she lost her must-win state of New Hampshire, where the electorate, both demographically and attitudinally, is the best Nikki Haley is going to see. All right? Certainly in a competitive. I have learned quite a bit about the Democratic effort to help Nikki Haley and Nikki Haley's willingness to take that help. I don't know how else to put this. There's no other way to put it. Like, I don't think Nikki Haley is a Republican anymore. She's working with people that you never would believe any Republican candidate would work with. She's accepting help. They have apps built. They're running ads. It's insane. The digital targeting is over the top. We were actually able to trigger several of them. Takes a while, but because they know a lot about us. So you have to kind of like fake some things to make them think that you are the person they want to target. And then you could see very clearly what they were doing. Looking into who owns and operates these groups, or, serves as the president, serves as the chairman or chairwoman. These are very bad people. I'm sorry. These are people who have rigged elections in third world countries, and then they literally gloat about it and pretend like it's credible. Yeah, done a lot in Romania. I'm not kidding. South America, South Africa. It's just crazy. But they're spending a ton of money. Sorry, my wife, she's with my daughter at their competition. I just got told what she did. She did good. Good. Awards. Anyway, we'll get more into this in a little bit, but normally when you are named or acknowledged as the presumptive nominee. That's when you get a bump. All right. If you're going to get one, that's when you're going to get one. It normally fades. It's not that big. And then the bump that you're going to wait for to see if you can get is that convention bump. And then that convention bump, will it hold? I think they're a little bit overblown, convention bumps, especially in the modern era. I think information is just too available now. And it's not going to be the moment that it used to be. The moment when the American public meets the Democratic nominee or meets the Republican nominee. Everybody knows who the hell these people are by the point that they are crowned the nominee, or proclaim, whatever you want to talk about, officially nominated. Since Trump won Iowa, and you heard, with the exception of very loud voices on social media, who, if you didn't know better, you would think are like some big chunk of people. They're not. And since Iowa, you could clearly see Donald Trump start to pull out ahead of Joe. He was already ahead, but I mean, the polls, people made a whole lot about the polls tightening back in October, right? And then it was a tightening, an expansion again. And then there was a tightening in January after the holidays. Oh, it's very clear. This is getting much closer now. But it really wasn't getting much closer. That's not really true. That's misleading. What was going on? It did get closer because the cycle of left-leaning polls was particularly more pro-Biden than they had been in the last few months. Polls that were showing ties when others had Trump up between 6 and 10 points were now Biden +1. Trump's advantage in some of the left-leaning polls that was maybe a few points, 3 points, then went away to like Trump +1 or even. All right, and you're going to see it in a second when I scroll up. However, January 11th, the final little dip here, everything just blows wide open. And Trump is now taking a lead that is the biggest lead he's ever had over Joe Biden. And if you go back to here, the problem 3.1 and 3.8, the problem is that Joe Biden is actually falling this time. Trump is cracked past his ceiling, his historical ceiling. He did it back in the fall. We've never seen him, hover around 47 in the average or higher. He's never been in some of these polls, CBS News, ABC News, the Wall Street Journal. He's never been at or above 50. Harris poll, which everyone is talking about, saying, right-leaning, it's a little bit too favorable to Trump. Is it? They had Biden up pretty substantially in 2020. I think they overstated Biden by 2 points. They did fairly well compared to others. Now they're one of the more bullish polls on Trump. They have Trump above 50. So he never cracked 50. And now here we are. And you can see Biden is falling. Trump is now at 47.3%. Let me just show you what that means. You have the Reuters Ipsos poll. I know people have been asking me, why is this still in the average? I've asked RCP. I haven't gotten an answer yet. But I don't know. I didn't follow the Reuters Ipsos poll like that. They're tied at 48 when everybody else, one is Trump +8, then there's Trump +6, Trump +2, Trump +1. The Economist YouGov is one of the worst polls for Trump. So is the Yahoo News poll, which is YouGov as well. They have Trump up by 1. I don't expect that to last. I think you're going to have people like The Economist and Yahoo News favor Biden this time with their polling from YouGov. They're going to weight it however they need to weight it. It must have been so bad this month that they had no choice but to put out the Trump +1 because the weights just would have been indefensible. I watched them the last 3 months, and even when they had Biden up by 1, which you can see down here. Where are you? Here it is. All they did was make it more educated. That's all they did. There were more than 2 times the numbers of Biden 2020 voters who said they would vote for Donald Trump. It was 2.5 to 1 if you compared it to Trump voters who said they were going to vote for Biden. If that happens, if Trump wins the 2020 switch by 2.5 to 1, there's just no way Biden can lead. It's just not possible. No, it's not possible. It's only a 4-point lead. It's not possible. It would be pretty close, but then you'd have to forget about the new voter that always comes into the electorate. How much? We don't know. I think the New York Times is going to New York Times too. What do I mean by that? Fudgers are going to fudge, man. They may be doing decent jobs in some midterms and in some races, but Nate Cohen and the team at New York Times and Siena have yet to prove that they could grapple with a presidential election nationally or in the battleground states. It Biden up by 9 nationally, and they called not a single battleground state correctly within the sampling era. Until they do that, we have to take it with a grain, especially if they're like a spot of blue in a sea of red, and it's repetitive. Because we're always going to expect an outlier. 19 out of 20 polls should be relatively close to each other. 1 out of 20 folks we should expect to be an outlier. It's not 1 out of 20 when it's the same repeat offenders. Quinnipiac, the New York Times. I've put up a million times how Morning Consult polled in 2020 was awful. Now look at them. Totally different. Point being, this doesn't usually happen this early. Nikki Haley's vowed to go on. She wants to stuff the electorate with more Democrats and independents that lean Democrat in South Carolina. It is easier for Democrats to vote in South Carolina. However, James Clyburn is not going to want a repeat of Joe Biden's poor performance in South Carolina. So this is going to be interesting. Let me show you something, because now that we're a few days in, it's important to note how these votes were being tallied in the Democratic primary in New Hampshire. That night, we basically were taking all of the write-ins and combining them with Joe Biden's actual vote, okay? There was a huge chunk of write-ins because Biden wasn't on the ballot in these areas. As the clerks tallied them, we took them first as write-ins, and then later, we've been doing it for a while now, I don't know if you guys have been watching, but taking those write-ins, separating them as write-ins for Joe Biden, and then giving Joe Biden his vote share. And that's why you have seen it go up and up and up and up and up. I will have something for you if I am allowed to talk to you. I will put it on Locals later about what's going on. There is apparently questions about whether or not that Reuters poll was fudged. Like something's wrong. Not that they gave Trump a +6. There may be something wrong with how they conducted that poll. And then it appears they like halfway polled it. And I don't know, but I will try to find out. Okay. Anyway. You may notice there's still a little bit over 8% of the vote for write-in candidates. I tried to stress to people that most of those write-ins will be for Joe Biden, but not all of them will be. Right now, as it stands, with 99% reporting, we overestimated how much of the overall share of the vote Joe Biden was going to get. We told you, I believe it was 62, 64%, and we said max. So currently right now, Joe Biden, 72, 74% max vote share in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is the state where a sitting president is going to find out whether or not he has a base problem. Pat Buchanan, Herbert Walker Bush. Ted Kennedy, Jimmy Carter. Donald Trump tied, I believe he tied, or a little bit over. Okay, a little bit over. And I'll make sure to tell people that. I guess you'll listen. I'll make sure to tell people that. Basically, Reagan comes first. Reagan's 1984 sitting incumbent primary in New Hampshire was 86, I want to say, percent. I have it up. I've shared the article. You guys can check it out. And then after him comes Trump and Obama, around 84%. Ooh, our South Carolina embeds are done. Cool. And then after that comes Bill Clinton. Right. George W. Bush got 80%, I believe. Or George, yes, 80. So in any event, you can see that there's always a part of even a sitting incumbent president's base that says we're going to go for somebody else. That's why New Hampshire is so finicky. It's a big reason why the Haley team, this was their best chance there. This is historically the state that gives you that problem. And it'll tell you whether or not a sitting president has an issue that needs to be addressed, or they're going to lose. They're not going to make it. Right now, Joe Biden's only at 63.9%. When the rest of that 8.3 gets tallied up, maybe there's some that have been missed, but this is an awful performance for a sitting incumbent president. The big stories always get buried. The broken media business model always does a disservice to the public. The two big stories from the primary in New Hampshire, now that the dust has settled, is that Trump smashed a ton of records, despite what is an unheard of effort and collaboration. I mean, that's really, it's a conspiracy and a collaboration between the Haley campaign and Democrats who are trying to wound Trump. They're afraid of Trump. Nobody was ever afraid of anybody else, to include Nikki Haley. Half of Nikki Haley's voters would never vote for her in a general election. That's how successful these people were. They would vote for Joe Biden. And yet, despite all of that, Trump romped it, broke everyone's record, Republican, Democrat, most votes ever received, broke the record for the largest share of the overall statewide population, which is just insane. I know that gets really nerdy, but that's just insane. And he won by 11. The second big deal, because why does that matter? It's like, because primary modeling absolutely does have predictive value. Toward the general election, I'm talking about. And looking at Joe Biden here, this is a historically poor performance. Joe Biden is in a lot of trouble. So, Clay, spend time worrying about how to learn empirical data and what it means and digest it, what's predictive and what isn't, instead of pushing nonsense and basically copium mixed with, fear mongering, whatever you want to call it, mixed with misinformation. Because if I was Team Biden, I'm preparing for a loss. By the way, you could lose even if you don't set off those alarms. Apparently, Donald Trump did. By the way, New Hampshire, primary modeling, primary voting, yet another anomaly from 2020. The one time when all of that predictive value went out the window. And that's another thing Clay should realize. 2020 was an election in which all the right things, all of the most predictive indicators that we have out there as psephologists, all of them were wrong at once for the first time. So push your media, drive-by narrative, drive-by media nonsense narrative all you want if that makes you feel better, because you supported Ron DeSantis and you lost. Because isn't that what really is going on here, right? Are any of them really honest brokers? I mean, I've had friends in this business, or people I thought were friends, and I've had people. I got to give you credit, Seth. If you're out there and you're listening, I got to give you credit. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but he most definitely said it's not an honest broker, Rich. I know he's your friend. He's not an honest broker. That happened to me like 10, 15 times this cycle. Despite knowing these people for as many, many, many years. And that is really a sad thing, because it's showing you like our character. Somebody had said before in locals, why don't politicians just admit when they're wrong? Don't they know the power of an apology? Americans, and I responded, Americans are very forgiving people. If you're wrong, or if you did something wrong and you're honest about it, you have your come to Jesus moment. Bill Clinton did it in the 90s. He may be the last one to do it, right? I mean, think about another time when a politician legitimately said they were sorry and like it was believable and then survived because of it. I can't think of another one. And the influencers, especially in Big Con, have taken that lead. They've taken that lead. It's tragic, really is. I mean, George W. Bush could have apologized for weapons of mass destruction. Right? There's plenty of things I could think of any president, including Donald Trump, that could have apologized. And they didn't. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this. A lot more about all of this. All right, folks, whether or not you like teas, coffees, whatever, Jam and Bean's got everything for everyone. Send us your feedback. They got a lot of new stuff. We want to hear about it. We're getting a little goodie bag we're going to share with you guys soon. You see the maple syrup there, all the fan favorites with the popcorn. We love it. K-cups, roasted coffee, freshly ground, or you can grind it yourself. They got the best medium-bodied K-cup on the market, period. And if you're like me and you really like dark roast, but sometimes later in the day you want a medium roast, maybe you get heartburn or something, right? These guys are it. By the way, like I always tell you, don't ever give politician credit for COVID. They don't deserve it. The real people who deserve it are the people who had businesses and resisted and survived and are trying to thrive and move forward. And that there's nobody better like Jam Bean. Patriots, Michigan-based, incredible company, great people, great product. If you sign up for a subscription, use the promo code TPP40. That'll get you 40% off that initial subscription cost right off the rip. And then when it renews, you will get 10% every month discounted just because you use the People's Pundit discount code. Again, it's Jam and Bean, like Jam and Bean. Promo code TPP40 at checkout. Oh man, I got those Biddo honeys that were freeze dried. I absolutely love them. And the saltwater taffy freeze dried is really good too. Just melts in your mouth. Don't bite freeze dried candy. You're gonna break a tooth, folks. You just hold it in your mouth and it disintegrates. So good. So good. There's so much more too. I don't even know what my favorite popcorn is anymore. I don't. Sour cream and chives, creamy dill. They sent us a ranch, the new flavor ranch, a couple of weeks ago. Laura and I ate it on the show, remember? Delicious. I don't even know anymore. And then also, you gotta check out that bacon. Can we show? Is there a way? Yeah, there is. Let's see if the bacon's right here. There's the free-dried Skittles and stuff. Where's the bacon? Bacon. There it is. And they got all these cool little, wraps and stuff that are just incredible. Nothing says I love you like bacon. Jam and Bean roses. Oh, man. It's getting to be Valentine's Day. I didn't even think of that. Oh, lordy. It's getting to be Valentine's Day, and they're bacon roses. Yes, they are bacon roses. I mean, is there nothing else in life? I mean, is there nothing better in life? Bacon roses. Yeah, Valentine's Day is coming, folks. Think about it. Ooh. Best think about it. What you gonna do? Aw. Had a nice conversation. We're gonna get him on real soon. My friend Wayne Dupree. Oh God, Wayne and I go way back. We've known each other for so long. We're gonna get him on the show to talk about it. But there was a clip that I really wanted to play for you guys. I know there's this whole thing about is we're coming up on the second hour, which we're gonna take our hour pause. But I wanted to play a clip from Wayne had done this on his show and talked about this before Governor Abbott even signed this order. And I think you're going to see the public's going to react to this. All right, they're going to have to pick a side. This immigration issue is going to be huge. And you know it is, because you're trying to see them spin the story here. Trump doesn't want the deal because he wants to run on the border. He could still, that's a real twist. It's not worth the border package. JD Vance put out a perfect statement to this. That's not what Trump is doing. It's not worth everything that you're giving up for something that doesn't even work or take effect immediately and is not going to be effective. Like, Trump knows how to stop the border crisis. He's done it before. I mean, I'm not sure anyone, including myself, is more qualified to talk about how to shut down the flow of illegal immigration than Donald Trump. Nobody's been more successful at doing it. And people who worked for Donald Trump and helped him do it, which, I wasn't there. And I tend to think he knows what the hell he's doing. Anyway, even if they did pass it, the only thing that's going to take effect immediately is the Ukraine funding and all the other crap that's packed into that deal, including what is a path to amnesty. It won't stop anything immediately at all. So the idea that Trump doesn't want it passed because then he can't run on it is stupid and doesn't make any sense, because it would still be a massive issue and a massive crisis. A massive crisis all throughout the election season. All right, maybe you saw this, maybe you didn't, but it's 10 to 1. I got to get a little bit more structured on my breaks here. So instead of running a break or running another ad in a little bit, I'm just going to play this clip, because this is the politics of immigration going into the 2024 election. And it is a massive albatross for the Democrats. Let's play this clip and back on the other side of the break.
The Biden border crisis is an absolute humanitarian disaster, and Democrats don't care. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't even know how many had died because he didn't care. When I brought 19 senators down to the border, we saw a man who had drowned floating in the Rio Grande. Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands upon thousands of children were brutalized and sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands of women were sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats do not give a damn. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses from Chinese fentanyl flooding across the southern border, and Democrats do not give a damn. Now, you may say, oh, come on, that's harsh. They care. They care. Somewhere in their hearts, they care about all the people suffering and dying. Baloney. Because if they cared, they would stop it. If you cared about the children being raped at the border, you would say no more. When Joe Biden came in, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited success, and he deliberately broke it. Democrats want these open borders. And this bill, this mysterious bill that is buried down in the basement of Chuck Schumer's office. All of you have a living as reporters. Ask yourself, why have you not read the text of the bill? There's a reason. As bad as we think the bill is, I promise you it's worse. The people pushing this deal know if the American people knew what was in it, they would be against it. This supplemental bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exit, headed for a train wreck. If you look at this bill, the bill is not designed to fix this problem. By the way, the single greatest national security threat to America, this right here. I think the odds of a major terrorist attack in the United States are higher today than they've been any time since September 11th. You know what? In that spike, how many Hamas terrorists are there? How many Hezbollah terrorists are there? And what are we going to say when they carry out an attack here like October 7th in Israel? This bill is not designed to fix the problem. This bill normalizes 5,000 people a day coming in. 5,000 people a day is over 1.8 million a year. That's called an invasion. By the way, under Joe Biden, we've had 9.6 million. So the great Republican compromise is we're for 2/3 of Joe Biden's open borders. We'll let in 6 million instead of 9 million. This makes utterly no sense. And there's a reason. Republican leadership is like Charlie Brown with Lucy and the football. And over again, they run for the football, and over again, Lucy Schumer pulls it away. And Republican leadership lands on their ass. They entered this negotiation saying, we will only do what Chuck Schumer will agree to. He doesn't want to fix this. He wants it to continue. So negotiating with Chuck Schumer on securing the border is like putting Hannibal Lecter in charge of a Go Vegan ad campaign. He might dine on your liver with a healthy side of fava beans, but it's not going to remotely do what the suggested objective is. Final point. Not only is this bill utterly ineffective in fixing the problem, but it's designed to fail. The chances of this bill passing the House of Representatives, I can quantify it mathematically. The chances of this bill passing the House are 0.000%. It ain't going to pass. At lunch, we had a vigorous discussion at lunch yesterday. I asked leadership, why on earth would you be teeing up a vote with every Democrat and 10 or 12 Republicans that has no chance of passing the House? It's not going to become law, and I get it. Leadership really wants Ukraine funding. But that doesn't happen unless you get a bill that can pass the House. The only purpose of taking this up is giving Democrats political cover to say, gosh, we would have secured the border, but those pesky House Republicans didn't let us. It's a good talking point. It's complete baloney, but it's a good talking point. This bill represents Senate Republican leadership waging war on House Republican leadership. It's not designed to secure the border, and it won't secure the border. And that's why leadership wants it kept in secret. They don't want anyone to see the text of it. Republicans in the Senate ought to have the sense and sanity to say, secure the border, or else we're not going to go along with providing fig leaves to cover up the deliberate failure of Joe Biden and the Democrats. They have caused this crisis.
Wow. That was effective. And normally I don't post videos on Twitter, but that was super effective, without a doubt. If they take it and run with it. Here's the problem, though. As so many of you pointed out in the comments while that was running, Republicans, John Cornyn, right? Locals. Saw that locals comment. They're pushing this bill. John Duarte in the House. Now, will it pass the House? Probably not. But John Duarte, who is in California 13, wants amnesty. He wants a fake border bill that has amnesty. Why? He's a farmer. It's Duarte Nurseries. They want cheap migrant labor. He lied to the primary voters of California 13. It's that simple. Sheriff Boudreaux, who's running for Kevin McCarthy's seat right now. He's got grand old endorsement of Rick Grinnell, and so many other of these so-called MAGA people are screwing the president over with their bad picks like that. By the way, they did last time. California Republicans, whether they call themselves MAGA or not, you can't listen to a damn one of them. They are all in on this bill. Boudreaux gets in, he'd vote for this bill. I don't care what he tells you. Kirkland, who's also in that primary, at the candidate forum the other day, scoffed and laughed at Donald Trump's proposal to deport the illegal immigrants who came here under the Biden administration. That's not practical. And by the way, I need that migrant labor. So the problem is, while the messaging is effective, what difference does it make when only the presumptive nominee of the party is the one who supports it? And the rest of them, I mean, you have solid senators up there on the Republican side trying to defend. Ted Cruz said this is Senate Republican leadership waging war on House Republicans. I disagree, Senator. That's Senate leadership on the Republican side waging war against their own voters. And he's smart to do it because we've all seen the numbers. Hispanics in the state of Florida do not support Democrat and Rhino Republican immigration policy. They don't. Trump is running double digits stronger than Ted Cruz among Hispanics in the state of Texas. That's why it's close with Cruz. He has a tiny lead, but Trump is stomping Joe Biden. This is Zapata County, Starr County. We've all gone through them before. Texas 34, Texas 15. Republicans just cannot win these races. They just can't. You're causing this distrust. Somebody had sent me this video on Twitter. It's an older African-American gentleman flipping out on the black community for voting for Joe Biden. Almost all of these videos that people send me or we scour the internet to find, it's not hard to find. You don't have to scour anything. All you have to do is look at TikTok, look at Twitter. They're everywhere. I would say within the last month or so, they're all mentioning immigration. Why? Because their children who are suffering because of it. And I'm going to play this clip real quick before I'm not going to really move on. I just want to talk. I want to get into what you can expect from Nikki Haley's campaign.
Money for you, you lazy. Yeah. What you think they doing? See, when Donald Trump was building that wall and Donald Trump was saying close the border, we got a crisis at that border, y'all called Donald Trump racist. Y'all said he was racist. You heard me? Y'all wanted him out of office. I'm sorry to say it, man, but listen, that's what you asked for. Y'all say vote blue no matter who, New York, Chicago, you heard me, California, all these places, and look what's going on. They don't need the black vote no more. They replacing your ass. With illegal immigrants, they're replacing you. They don't.
That's not some white right-winger going on about replacement theory. That gentleman is old enough where actually that's far more, you will find far more loyalties among black voters with voters that are older than with voters that are younger. Younger black voters do not have the loyalties that their parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles have. The younger they are, the more inclined they are to vote for Donald Trump. All right. What is this all? So again, put that in your hat or put that in your pipe and smoke it. Marinate on it for a bit. Marinate on it. And what message does it send when the establishment then partners with what is thought to be their enemy, their political enemy, to oppose not just the candidate, they're opposing the will of the voter. And that's what Nikki Haley's campaign is doing. It's sending a wonderful message. You saw Rona call for her to just get out. And the RNC was floating around a petition. It's true. That was basically calling Donald Trump the presumptive nominee and telling Nikki Haley it's over. You should get out. You will lose total support. Donald Trump said, "Nah, let it go. Let's just cream her." And I get that. That's probably the right political move, but it's not the right strategy move, frankly, because we went over this on Wednesday. She's going to taint every state voter record going forward here. South Carolina is going to be horribly tainted. And it's going to take, I don't even know. We've never been here before. A cycle, at least 2 cycles to screen them out again. It's not it. By the way, pollsters, you better be careful. It's mess with your voter models. And you know it. You're going to infer somebody is this or that, the other thing. Going to be wrong. Especially in the South, it's really going to screw you up because you already have to contend with older Democrats who vote Republican for the president and for the senatorial candidates. Now, she took a big blow, and I told you anything Nikki Haley is now really becoming a joke like Kamala Harris is. Like, you can't even get through a commentary without some kind of innuendo. I don't really even mean it, but you just can't help it. I mean, it's just too easy. Her poor husband and children. When the man who had an affair with her quote tweets a meme mocking her for being a backseat banger, whatever you want to call it. It was an SRX, not a Cadillac. Oh my God. But it's Jody. Dude, she's always talking about her husband overseas. If you're in the military, you know what I'm talking about. Jody quote tweeted Ramble Rants and the meme. Poor guy, man. He's being cucked all over Twitter. This is horrible. Horrible. Anyway, I told you it was going to be a very difficult Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon for Nikki Haley. And then, of course, I put this out. She did, in fact, lose Reid Hoffman and a Democratic group. They bailed on her and they said, that's it, no more. They're touting. How do you know, by the way, that there are more people bailing? Because her campaign is touting the rearview mirror. Ron DeSantis did this too. And so did Never Back Down. But we raised so much. We raised more than Trump with our PAC. That is the same number they've been citing now for 2 weeks. It tells you they're having trouble. They are having trouble with an influx. Here's why. Those grassroots donations that you heard so much about are total BS. They're Democratic activists and donors and bundlers who have networks, grassroots networks of low dollar. They have high dollar ones too, but low dollar contributors, $5 to $250. And they were putting the pedal to the metal, encouraging them, those networks, to donate low dollar to Nikki Haley to stop Donald Trump. They are very open about what's the correct word to use? I don't want to use their word because I don't want them to know fully how much I know. But they're trying to influence the primary. They don't even think they can get Nikki Haley to win. They just are trying to keep her surviving. And by the way, that's the word they use when they refer to their little plan in South Carolina. Survive South Carolina. If we could just get Nikki Haley enough money and enough votes that she can survive in South Carolina, then we can get her to Super Tuesday where she will win. And I kid you not, there are multiple states that they're targeting, but open primary states like Virginia, Vermont is another one they're targeting, Massachusetts. Trump has huge leads in these states, but in a state like Massachusetts, you're talking about 19% of the vote is a registered Republican vote. It will be an independent vote, and Democrats can get out there and do their thing. So they think in these states, especially in the New England states, there are too few Republicans, even if Donald Trump wins them by 80-20 margins, 85-15 margins. There's so little of the electorate that if they can get their independents and many of their Democrats to not vote in their primary, but in the Republican primary, they can actually deliver some of those states to Nikki Haley. Honestly, the numbers back up their analysis. It is not a joke. Their plan is not first of all, it's very well funded, or at least it has been up until this point. Second of all, it's very well thought out. Listen, Democrats, whatever you want to call them, when it comes to winning elections, they are not stupid. They know the math. They know the numbers. They know where the votes are. They know how to get those votes out. They know how to harvest those votes. They know how to nudge those voters. They know what they're doing. And the numbers in some of these states absolutely do matter. They're significant enough where they could cause chaos in the Republican primary and cause this thing to go on for a very long time if they wanted to. Now, she's not going to be racking up wins, and she will be humiliated in her own home state. They don't care about that. Reid Hoffman, apparently, and I gotta protect people here, so I gotta be careful. He just said this is no longer a viable investment because he's maybe the friend of a pedo, but apparently he's not that stupid. New Hampshire, you already put your best foot forward and you lost. And to that, their argument was, but we haven't gotten to Vermont and Massachusetts where they're just like no registered Republicans. There are still a lot of registered Republicans, about a third in the state of New Hampshire. And yet we were able to nearly outnumber them with Democrats and independents. And his response was, but you are going to suffer a defeat in your own home state. And you cannot get past that. It will be too demotivating to voters. So believe me when I tell you that the Haley campaign knows that they're taking assistance from these people. They're happy. It's part of their plan. It is part of their plan. Virginia, I got to get the list in front of me. If I can, actually. Well, 1 second. I'll give you every state right now. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? It is. Here it is. Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, Colorado, Minnesota, and Virginia. 6 Super Tuesday states that they intend to put, or they want to. If they can get the money to do it, then significant amount of money. Sorry, there's another one right there. But yeah, significant amount of money that they think they would be able to pull this off. Let me know what you think. It's 1:10. I'm going to play another video here. And then when we come back, I'm going to play this video from my brother from another mother. And then when we come back, I'm going to answer some of these questions. I'm going to scroll through some of them. If you, are like tippers and super chats on YouTube, I can find you easy. But for the rest, I got to go through it. So I'm going to do that. Then we'll hit the super chats when we come back. We'll hit the tips from the Rumble Rants, all that, whatever it's called on whatever platform. We'll hit that, and then we'll get to some of your other questions. All right. If you like the video, don't forget to actually like the video. Doing this is enormously helpful when it comes to being able to be seen on these platforms, promotable on these platforms, and then, of course, advertisers. So subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, mosey on over to Rumble for us and go ahead and like it there anyway and subscribe anyway. Hit the notification bell anyway. All of that will let you know when we're going to go live. Be super helpful. But, of course, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. Be back in a couple of minutes. This is a question over whether or not, I know we should shut up and let it roll, but my man Wayne has been telling his audience now for a while, months, that states have a lot more power than they think. And it goes beyond just running to the Supreme Court and hoping they bail you out. That's still the state relying on not their police power or what the power the Constitution has delegated to them or left up to them. It's relying on the federal government's power to save you. That's not federalism. Not really. States are not exerting their authority for 100 years more. They've been ceding authority to the federal government. 16th Amendment was a major blow to the 10th Amendment because it effectively gave the federal government the power to directly tax. That was not the case back then. So states, just from their role as the revenue, not only creators, but the revenue, how could I put this? They were the one who collected the revenue, right? So they're basically the tax collectors. And the federal government was kind of subservient to, what they would dole out. Now, that doesn't mean they still don't have any power. Government Abbott's trying to invoke this right now by proclaiming that there's an invasion. It supersedes a lot of the other issues that are dealing with the supremacy clause with the federal government. It's interesting, though, because it does or could impact how the next president, if he is a border hawk like Trump is, how he may deal with it, and then give arguments to Democrats, because Democrats will argue the supremacy clause all day now with Joe Biden being the president. They did it when Obama was the president. But when Trump was the president, they argued the federal government did not have the power to interfere with state business, and they went and ran to judges and left-wing judges, and it's called judge shopping in Hawaii and, all these other liberal districts. That just was crazy, but that's what they did. Anyway, with those cases would get to the Supreme Court multiple times. The Supreme Court, even before it was 3 Trump appointees, were livid, just livid that they kept bringing these cases. And you could get the sense with every opinion that the court was had less and less patience for these district judges in Hawaii, thinking they can issue nationwide injunctions. And even Chief Justice Roberts had written that what Trump had done in multiple cases was squarely within the scope of presidential authority. So it's going to be interesting here, but that's the case Wayne is making, is that, we just don't see states exercise the power. They have a lot more power than modern Americans think they do. They just never use it. All right. So let's listen to him as we take our little break.
Right. Not, then the other states are going to see what Governor Abbott is doing right now is what we've been saying on this show that many people need to understand. The states have more power than the United States government in many obstacles of what,
unless they don't use it. Once you start not using it, that's when it erodes.
There it is.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And somehow, some way, even though even Speaker Johnson, the Speaker of the House told Texas to fire the government. So
that was amazing.
I mean, yet you have the third person in line for the presidency telling a state governor defy the courts, defy the ruling, and do what yeah, that's right, Debbie. Thank you so much. Maybe he is. Maybe he rolled in there and turned it on. Either way, that's what we've been saying for a while. The states have more power than the government. And now I bet you dollars to donuts that they're going to be holding meetings over the weekend, private meetings about what they're going to do with Texas. What are we going to do?
Well, all those other states, let's get all those attorneys general together, attorneys general, and sue these people. Put it out so everybody in this whole country sees it.
Well, and I'm just saying, everybody's got to understand, though, this is the start.
Right.
This is not the finish, and this is going to get ugly.
We hope.
We hope this is the start. But think about Trump. Whatever happened, whatever you believe happens in 2020, Trump goes away. He isn't sitting with 91 charges. Trump said, screw you, I ain't going away. Now he's sitting with 91 charges.
And he's the first guy in 40 some years that won Iowa and New Hampshire.
I heard that last night.
And I mean, listen to the media coverage too, because when the Supreme Court kicks student loans and says, no, you can't do that. What does the Biden administration do? They just pass something else and go back.
Yep.
And now all those people on the left that were celebrating, they're trying to find a workaround, are now like, oh my God, I can't believe that he's not that he's not following the Supreme Court. Yeah, frankly, read his letter. His logic is sound.
When I look at what's happening down there in Texas, and I look at what we've been saying, because again, we have been saying it on the show. I got to keep bringing that up, but we have been saying that on the show about how the state has more rights. But like I said, over the weekend, they're going to be holding meetings, and somebody somewhere was like, well, we're going to have to shut down something. We're going to have to stop sending money to the state or something like that. They'll come with some bull crap thing like that. Now, believe it or not, I think Texas is sustainable on their own. I'm going to tell you the truth.
100%.
If they want to, they don't really need government intervention to do what, hell, they got the Texas freaking Rangers, man. And I ain't talking about the baseball team, but they got some badasses down there in Texas. That's why those say you don't mess with Texas. You don't want to mess with them. You don't want to mess with those men. You don't want to mess with those women with the hair all the way halfway to heaven. You really don't want to mess with them because Texas is a different breed. And when other states, like they say, when other states start seeing it, you're like, wait a minute, you trying to tell me that we had this much power? Are you serious? We can do something like this too? Get the books. Get the books.
You know what I don't understand? How can you be a Democrat and live in Texas and watch what's happening to you and continue to be a Democrat? Why didn't the
I just want to add that I want to insert something here, even though I was trying to use this time to look for questions and do a couple things. Where do you live is the question, right? So if you're a wealthy white Democrat who lives in some gated community, there are tons of them in Texas, in Tarrant County and Harris, outside of both Austin and Dallas, and the suburbs of them. There's still a lot of them that are sheltered, is my point, right? And then, of course, you have some of that, like what used to be considered a traditional Republican, which I hate because it's not traditional at all. They're just Democrats now. And then, of course, you have some at the still where there are ancestral Democratic roots in southern Texas, especially along the Rio Grande and El Paso. They don't see the Republican Party really as much better. They don't. So I would answer that the following. So what exactly have Republicans shown these voters that gives them an incentive to make that jump, to make that switch? They haven't shown much at all. And unless your name is Donald Trump, they don't really believe you. So that's it. That's the point I would make. Real quick, just to get to one before we let this roll. Ryan on locals had two things. Going to vote for POTUS right now. Trump can count on 3 votes here in Minnesota. Yep, there's Minnesota and a lot of other states super, super, super early. And then also, when you do your next national poll, can you add a couple of questions about the border and illegal immigration and deportation? We'll see. Of course, I think that it's a prescient issue, and we should absolutely poll prescient, things that are current. And I think that's likely. I do like when we're polling these races, though, to keep the questionnaire small. You know that. So we'll have to see. Crew Kid, let's just go through a couple of them before we continue with this. Crew Kid said, and this is going back to what Clay Travis, right? And his comments. I mean, it's really just a disgrace that any so-called talk radio giant or Republican, any who replaced Rush for that matter, would ever regurgitate drive-by media narrative without full, complete information and context. Rush was so big about context. Crew Kid, how could he talk like this without bringing up everything that I mentioned earlier, which you are 100% correct about? They bragged about in Time magazine. They bragged. This is not a secret. This is crazy. Anyway, and then Tony says, we're going to talk about the border rebellion. We're on that now. I know it took a little bit, but I just wanted to recognize it. Interesting how it's shaken out so far. Not sure I like all the other states sending National Guard. What if they get nationalized now? There's more to stop Texas. This is something also I was talking about with a friend of mine, you may know, obviously, who also served in the Army. We were regular Army, however. We were not National Guard. Although I did try after I got hurt to go to, I believe it was the 19th. But, once you get that number on your profile, they're never going to let you serve on a team. It's not going to happen. So I'd rather just go home than push paper. But anyway, the National Guard is a great example of what Wayne is talking about and how states have given up their power. The states were never supposed to give their militias and their guards up to the federal government. I mean, that would have Look, you had Hamilton and Jefferson fighting constantly in the Washington administration over the proper role of the military, the size of the military, whether there should be a standing army. The founders had just argued that a standing army was one of the most dangerous things to liberty in the world or in history. And that is one thing that the Brits had done to them with the Quartering Act and everything else. And Hamilton had all of these reassurances about how the states would be able to physically fight back in the event of a tyrannical federal government who had raised an army. All of this went out the window. All of those things, those reassurances, and I don't like Alexander Hamilton. I know that, modern liberals just they exalt him right now. I mean, he's the father of the dynamic executive with way too much power. So me personally, I can't stand him. He's worse than a silver spoon, born and bred aristocrat. He's worse. He's a wannabe aristocrat. And that's why Hamilton was so damn dangerous. He was not rich and well-born, as he would say, but he wanted to be. He did everything in his power to make himself liked by the upper crust. That's a dangerous person. He forgets where he comes from, despises where he comes from, looks down on where he comes from, and wants to be something he's not. In 2016, we coined this phrase, there are many of them now, in modern America. They're not rich. They're not the elites. But they want to be. We called them wannabe elites. They live, a lot of them, in metro suburbs. Anyway, that's a fair concern to have, Tony. A fair concern to have. We were just Laura and I were just talking about this with a friend of ours. What's the likelihood of Trump pardoning the sanctimonious for his FEC violations? I don't know. That's a really good question. I'm not privy to any of those. I will tell you this, though, for people who think, oh, well, DeSantis, he suspended his campaign because, he's in the running for VP. No, he's not. Let me just end this right now. Okay. Now, can Trump do something that is unexpected? He has a very, 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 very long habit, well-documented habit of doing the unexpected and surprising everybody. But DeSantis was a betrayal. It wasn't a political rivalry. And even when Trump has had these rivalries, like Ted Cruz, that was all the talk too. Is he going to pick him? Is he going to this? He didn't. Now, will he pardon him? Why would he then? Why would he? To make his voters happy? Again, his voters on Twitter and on whatever X, they're not representative of his voters in our polling data. They're just not. They're loud. They make themselves look bigger than they are. There's a ton, and I would also caution you guys. It's very clear. It's not organic at all. Talk about AstroTurfed. There's tons of these accounts that were created in 2022. They just came out of nowhere. And all of them in unison, in concert, are like, I am only DeSantis. I'm only writing in DeSantis. If we looked at our last national poll of DeSantis voters who said that they wouldn't vote or they would write in Ron DeSantis, I'll give you the number for it right now. December 2023, toward the end of the year. Let me bring it up. Now you can clearly see here, and I do want to finish it, Wayne's thing, because he's going to bring up a couple of things that you guys, the immigration issue is obviously a hot issue. You guys are all talking about it, and I get it. Bear with me, though, for 1 second, because I think it's worth bringing this up. So, David, why would he? The truth is, and you never want to, subtract. The name of the game is adding in elections and winning. But I'm not sure, looking at the polling data, he needs these people who are making all this noise on X. And by the way, where do so many of them come from? Florida. Trump is going to romp Florida, guys. They were saying that months ago. We've polled Florida 4 times. Trump is going to win Florida. He's up in Florida almost 10 points in our poll. Do we see these people? Yeah, we see them. They're just not that significant. It's just true. Now you can see Nikki Haley's voters. They're Biden voters. All right. So anyway, less than 2% said they would not vote at all. Yes, 17% said that they would write him in, but you're talking about 19 people. 19 people. Let me see. Sorry, with Laura not here, it's a little bit difficult. But yeah, I mean, that's why I put it in this format, though, because some people would all of a sudden grab the number and say, see, it's 17%. Yeah, but by this time, he was at 9% of the vote, or whatever the hell he was at. 17% of that is not a lot. Yes, it could make a difference in very, very close elections. If it was 2020, I could see it made a difference, you know? I could see that. But it's not 2020. And you have a ton of new voters who say they're going to vote for Trump in huge numbers. You have Biden voters who said they made a mistake and they're going to vote for Trump. It's not happening in a vacuum either. I could understand if we were talking about a very similar dynamic to 2020 and all of this was happening in a vacuum and he, lost by like 45,000 votes across 3 states. So, every vote will matter. Every vote will count. But it's not. In fact, almost all of this analysis that we've been criticizing, one of their biggest problems is that they think that all of these things occur in a vacuum. That's just not how it works. It's just not how it works. Let me put this up, hotcake. Yeah, her voters aren't really Republican voters. And she's going to have to really decide real soon what she's going to do about this because, yeah, I mean, man, what is she going to do? She burns. Look, Ron DeSantis has burned so many bridges because of how his so-called rapid response team and every other element to his campaign, they've pissed off everybody from MAGA to Bush land. I was told that Jeb Bush was laughing hysterically at the results in Iowa. His advisor, a former advisor, laughing hysterically. So, there it is. And by the way, I just want to tell people, because I did see somebody's comment, on Twitter, I wrote that the very next day. I just wanted to point out, it's not that I'm trying to take anything away from Mr. Murphy, but Mr. Murphy would not have won the special election for Coup 6 in New Hampshire if Donald Trump did not break records with turnout. He just would not have won that. I'm sorry. Pittsburgh Township would never have voted the way that it voted if Donald Trump was not there. I tried to tell you guys, in New Hampshire, rural does not necessarily mean conservative. Coos County is a great example. The further you go in New Hampshire north and rural, the more it looks like Vermont. And I actually got a big media request. Apparently somebody had heard me make the comment about, them being patchouli oil stinking women who don't shave their armpits, a bunch of liberals. And I just they thought I was going to cave or something and wait to see if that's a hit piece. But I just responded by, what part of this did you not understand? You know who I'm talking about. Disgusting, liberal, white, hippie women who smell like body odor and patchouli oil. Okay? And you know what I'm talking. Stop acting as if like I insulted you and you don't know what I mean. We all know what I'm talking about. It is not Hallmark when you drive up there, folks. What happened there is that over the years, Trump has gotten a lot of these people who feel that wannabe elitist class has, basically exiled them from the Democratic Party. So many of those voters have nowhere left to go. So as the educated, once white conservative, which was never really conservative, bounces on MAGA and goes to Joe Biden and other Democrats, those people, by the way, of whom there are more of, switch to Trump and Republicans. And Murphy was the benefactor of being on the ballot the same day Donald Trump was. So excuse me. Norm Missoula is a great example of it. They're there. You know what I'm talking about. We have them. We had them in Gainesville, too. We had a small pocket of them in Gainesville. I'll never forget my son. He's 14 now, but he's a little boy. And he's just like, this woman is just talking to me. It's terrible, trying to ask me questions about certain things in the city. And my son was just like, Daddy, why doesn't that woman shave her armpits? In front of her, right in front of her. I was like, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later, son. Talk about that later. I don't wear deodorant because it's bad for your body. Aluminum is not good. Yeah, I don't use aluminum deodorant either. I still don't stink. I still use deodorant. You're offending me. Your body odor is offending me. And no amount of patchouli oil that you stick on your stank ass is ever going to take that away. Somebody tell these women, please. It's not cool to go out in public like that. And they're in their little tinker shops. They're having their little celestial seasonings tea, whatever the hell it is. Tell me I'm mean. You want to elaborate? Maybe clarify what you meant by stank women who smell like patchouli oil? Sure, no problem. I meant there are stank-ass women who smell like patchouli oil in these rural towns that are a bunch of liberals who don't wear deodorant, do not bathe, do not shave their armpits. Have you ever been there, sir? Clarify these right. Exactly. Have you ever been to one of these places, sir? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were the most charming little places in the world. Charming little places in the world. They really were. You could turn it on. It looked like, who watches Hallmark for Christmas? It's like, what the hell is the name of that one? There's like 5 movies to deal with this town, this fictionalized town. And Evergreen. Christmas in Evergreen. This one, that one, the red pickup truck. That's what it was 30 years ago. And let me tell you, you walk into that crafts, that little tinker store across the street from the cafe, and you ain't gonna find Joe Wagner. Some gorgeous, beautiful. He's a chauvinist. I don't know. Maybe I am. That's not true. I love women. Gustavo, satchels. Gustavo knows exactly what I'm talking about. Yes! That's right. And not all of them do, Blackfish. Not all of them do. Frankly, there are a lot of them that, they just, as a public service announcement, there is this new product called Lumi, developed by a liberal who doesn't like aluminum either. You may want to visit that website. I heard it's totally liberal ingredient approved. And if you want to know exactly what I'm talking about, go look at one of those commercials. Like, no shame whatsoever. You can use Lumi everywhere, and then proceeds to list everywhere you can use Lumi. You guys know what I'm talking about. Come on. Let's cut the crap. We really at a point in society where we just can't be honest about these things. Of course we can. Of course we can. All right. Let's I'm going to take a couple of minutes here. Let's rock with Wayne again. I'm going to take a couple of minutes and gather up some more questions. All right. Oh, again, I could see some people are talking to Laura on some other chats. Laura's not here. Her and my daughter my daughter does, as you guys know, competitive dance. So they're serious about this stuff. So this is as serious as cancer. They go and travel all over the country, and sometimes you got to miss school for it and everything. She's a great student. would never jeopardize her academics over it. But I mean, this is serious stuff. And apparently she did incredibly well too. So I'm pretty proud of her. Well, I always am. Even if she didn't do well, super proud of her. She's competitive. She's got drive. She never quits. She expects the world of herself, as you should always. Never let the world convince you to settle for mediocrity. That's what this world is now. Everybody should feel that they can be superior at something. Everyone should feel that at least one thing in life is their thing where they're the best, or at least damn close to it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with driving yourself beyond the point that any other person has. Sometimes little sessions are healthy. Laura's a dance mom, and I'm a dance dad. Although Laura's not like the dance moms like you'd see on TV. She can't stand those women, and they exist. That's right, Blackfish. They exist. It does. It costs a lot of money, man. Jay, you're not joking. It costs a lot of money. It's no joke. But, she's getting like world, experience, training. Same thing with my son. Like, he's, it's not, this isn't that bad, but discipline and focus on certain things is good. Competition is good. Participation trophies are not. Then it doesn't drive you towards anything. I loved where we were. Certain things that I do miss quite a bit about Florida where we were at, but moving here for these kids was the best thing possible. I mean, this one's in marching band now in ROTC, and he loves structure, and that's great because some people just need to be structured. This one does this one does that. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's good to expect. Hooked on Taekwondo. My son's girlfriend is there's some elements I can tell there because I took Taekwondo too. There's some elements of Taekwondo to it, but it's a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ground stuff, what she's doing, which is good. But then they come home and like wrestle together, and it's pretty funny, and you got to keep your eye on them. I'm watching you too. That's not an armbar, liars. No, Rover's not. My oldest is. He's in. Listen, and I don't know how I feel about this, guys, but I had a really good friend when I was growing up, and he used to mimic Michael Jackson. He loved it. Like, everybody watches Dirty Dancing, so you could watch Patrick Swayze go, "Nobody puts baby in the corner," right? It's awesome. Not him. He watched it so we could figure out how to dance. And he didn't take any formal lessons until way later. Started starring at like 16 years old. Started starring in these like dance and musical performances because he could sing. He was the lead singer, actually, of our band when we were younger. And at first, all of our friends made fun of him. Like, bro, you're dancing, bro. You're taking tap. Bro, you're, I think people were brutal back then. And I said, leave him alone. Leave him alone. Maybe his legs are going to get so strong, he's going to be able to kick your head off your shoulders because I took martial arts. That was my thing. Anyway, it's all fun and games. It's all jokes until he lands Conrad Birdie, and is the star in the theater in like Red Bank or something. I mean, it was really cool. In any event, where I'm going with this is that my son watches the girls, my little 4-year-old Rora, he watches the girls, and I got them this like spring mat thing and everything to practice. And this boy, 4 years old, is like doing PKs and incredible, like, I don't even know what all of these things are called. He's going to aerial by the time he's like 6. It's crazy. So Laura's like, should we put him in dance? And I'm like, I don't know, Laura. Can we put him in martial arts first if the kid likes to kick? And I don't know. Maybe it's my own bias and I'm a little bit backward. But and she's like, that's what we have you for. You teach the kids how to fight, so we don't pay for it. And we do. But I don't know. Guys, what do you think? What do we call the band members in boot camp? Yeah. Yeah, I can't say that word. You know what we called him anyway? I can't say that word. You know that. The 90s are over. You know what I mean? The 90s are over. So yeah. All right, let's rock with Wayne, and I'll grab some more questions. All right, because I think Wayne's making a good. He's making a good conversation here, and he's been talking about it for a while. Because Wayne, I'll tell you, is the kind of person where you can get into this, the history of the founders, where they stood, and the role of the states, and how badly. I mean, God, Wayne and I have been having philosophical conversations about federalism for many, many years, and somewhere along the line, like after the Tea Party movement, Republicans just stopped caring about that. There was a convention of the states idea, and everybody was really kind of. There were people who loved it and pushed it, and then there were skeptics or critics who would say it could be hijacked. And one of the state power and sovereignty is one of the least used. Government. It is probably the least used. It's almost never used. States almost never do what Governor Abbott has done here. Almost never. So interesting.
Why didn't this crime family fall apart yet? I mean, really, there can't be
Mexican food.
There can't be across the country. There can't be that many people that want our destruction. Something's funny here.
Listening to those people in New Hampshire, they believe
Lord,
the stuff that they see on TV.
Wait till you hear this.
Constitution of democracy.
Again, make sure your anger is focused where it's supposed to be. Again,
Right.
Well,
Well,
that's a crime what these freaking networks have done.
I mean, that's what's remarkable. The mainstream media is the enemy of the people. We
You're
say it
damn
all the
right they
time,
are.
Yeah.
You got to have a RICO case against them.
right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that we always look at things from our perspective and like, how do they fall for this? Why do they think that? But they believe their propaganda. And then what's funny is they think we're the stupid ones. They're like,
they
oh
do.
my gosh, what?
Yeah.
And it's like, you really think? I was having this conversation with a guy. We're doing a business thing on. We were talking about immigration. He's a lefty, and I'm like, you really think it's sustainable having 3 to 5 million people coming in a year, and we're promising them all these goods and services? And I'm like, since Joe Biden's been president, it's been more people than like all but 8 states in the nation. You really think that's sustainable? And he's giving me these talking points about how we welcome refugees and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I understand all that. I'm just saying, from a business perspective, we're making a business deal. I need to understand your business logic. We ended up not making a deal. And I said, like, you can't think that's.
I want to get to this. The Fed.
You can't think that's a good idea.
Talk about. Look, they've changed the definition of migrant, and I've gone over what a migrant is and what illegal immigration is. But you just said refugee. These people are not coming from war.
No,
The
that's what
government's
he
not
called
pushing them out. You know,
Right.
the government's not pushing them out or enacting some type of.
Yeah, so that's the end of it. And I actually thought they were going to run this clip with this woman that he was talking about, about how they just really don't know. They just don't. But that's the problem when it comes to a lot of these states' rights issues. That voter, and I guess it was in another segment, but that voter just didn't have any idea. But that's because the states have not used them, guys. So people don't know. They have no idea. Also, Jay on locals, Jay 32356. I was just looking at this morning. Do I still have it up on my browser? Actually, let's see. Yeah, I do. Yeah, so it's easy for me to just share. Traders keep bets. The Fed rate cuts will start in May. All right. So they think they got, this is scary to me because housing is not under control. God, what else, guys? I don't believe the growth rate of 3.3%. And we're talking about a downward revision of almost 1 million jobs throughout the entire year last year. 11 out of 12 months. Employment survey, the employment situation, which is the household jobs report, the monthly jobs report. They are lying. I mean, folks, what are the odds that they missed the forecast in one direction? 11 out of 12 months. I just think they're full of crap. I think that we've seen the bureaucracy at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Bureau of Economic Analysis. We have seen them fudge numbers, and they have been caught fudging numbers in the past. The Bureau of Labor Statistics did it, and there's several. I'm trying to tie in a couple of questions here, but the Bureau of Labor Statistics did this in the final month before the 2012 election to dip unemployment below 7% because Mitt Romney's talking point was about 7% employment. And no president had ever been reelected with unemployment still above 7%, to include Herbert Walker Bush. There were a lot of parallels being drawn that year. Anyway, they lied. And the New York Post got, had a source. Bottom line, they came out with it, and they fudged the jobs report to help reelect Barack Obama. Or I would say under the Trump administration in 2018, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, we caught them. So did Charles Payne from Fox Business. Charles and I were messaging back and forth when we first saw it. We caught them changing how GDP is reported. Not that they made up that alternative gauge when they reported that number. It's just that they never reported the GDP alternate reading as the top line reading. It never went out like that in press releases. Never. Not throughout the Obama years, not throughout the Bush years, which, by the way, they changed how GDP is calculated under Obama as well in order to help Obama look like he had a stronger economy when he didn't. And some of the things that were included in gross domestic product for the first time ever when they made those changes were totally ridiculous and indefensible. And nobody with half a brain or being honest would believe that to be production. I mean, it's just ridiculous stuff. Things that are intangible can be included in GDP, of course, but it was not like that. We can go on and on. I mean, Hollywood nonsense, money that's just like, that would take an entire segment. But just believe me when I say they did. They already changed what went into the calculation of GDP. Then Trump, who had argued that there was no 2% new normal, that GDP on an annual basis, which at that time was a rolling averages of the quarters, all right, could hit 3%, even more. After the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was passed, a whole bunch of money gets repatriated. A whole bunch of jobs are created. A whole bunch of new businesses are started. The economy breaks 3%. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reports the alternative measure of GDP, which is the year over year from the fourth quarter, and it was 2.9. Charles Payne and I immediately see this, and we're like, wait a minute. Let's try and give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's look it up. We went back and we looked it up. It was never reported like that. I say, I'll draft an inquiry, a media inquiry. Let's see what they respond with. And folks, I'll tell you, that's still in my email to this day. We said, why did the Bureau of Economic Analysis decide to release the alternative measure of GDP when the historically cited quarter to quarter, averaging of the quarters throughout the year is a different rate? It's just over 3%. They sent back the most bogus response to myself and Charles Payne I have ever seen. We've always said that this is an alternative measure, and we just thought that this month for this press release, we would show people the alternative measure. I'm like, okay, but if you could follow back up here, stay focused. You've never done this before. Why did you decide to do it now? Showing them that there's the alternative measure, even bringing attention to it, is one thing. That's fine. Why did you change your headline report and not use the primary measure of GDP? Nothing. They went dark. No follow-up. Speaking of clarifications, would you like to clarify? They did it because they're political bureaucrats. The traditional gauge, averaging the quarters, was above 3%. Donald Trump had campaigned on 2% not being the new normal, hitting 3% fairly easily, he said. They did not want him to fulfill a campaign promise. That is what they did. That's why they did it. And 2.9 looked a lot worse for him. By the way, I donate to Shriners all the time. That's why that's up. If you're looking for a great place to give, Shriners Hospital for Children is one of them. Think about all the $37 million Nikki Haley wasted in New Hampshire. Think about how much good that would have done at like St. Jude's, funding not only treatment for these brave children who are diagnosed with these cancers, but R&D to make sure that there are lives that can be spared. I wish I had $37 million to give to St. Jude's or Shriners, or split between both. Don't forget Brickhouse Nutrition. The link is in the description. Field of Greens, baby. 15% off. Use the promo code TPP. Links in the description now. Anyway, Ann's over here. Inflation is cooling, but not quite quick enough to allow the U.S. Central Bank to deliver its first interest rate reduction by March, with traders betting on Friday that May is the more likely kickoff to a round of Fed rate cuts this year. Commerce Department report on Friday showed inflation by the Federal Reserve's target measure rose 2.6 in December from a year early. The Fed their target is 2%. The personal consumption expenditure price index, right? The underlying core inflation, which strips out food and energy prices and which the Fed views as a good gauge for where price pressures are heading, was running below 2% on the 3-month and 6-month basis, the data showed. Here's the problem. The revisions to both CPI, PPI, as well as the jobs report, as well as personal consumption. We're talking about the personal income and outlays report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The revisions over the last, not just this past year, has been incredible. I don't even know there's no other year to characterize it. Well, that's not true. They did lie a lot about wage growth under the last year of Barack Obama. And then we didn't know until the end of the first year of the Trump administration how badly they actually estimated and initially reported personal incomes and outlays. We had a great report on that. People Spend It Daily back then. I think the wage growth under the first year of Trump was like a ridiculous times higher than what Barack Obama's was initially reported. And that was not even factoring the revisions. And we were doing all sorts of stats with it that really blew people's minds about how much these lies matter. My point is, I think the Fed's a one-trick pony. You know, they don't really know what the hell they're doing. Jamie Dimon really, his comments the other day were perfect to explain, this to people. They have little idea what on earth they are doing when it comes to these cuts. And you have to, what about the banks? They raised rates in the spring. What about the banks? The last time they tried inching up the rates before the their target hit with inflation, they caused bank failures, or they contributed to them. They didn't cause them. There were a lot of underlying reasons that caused those bank failures. But when you raise the rate like that, you're raising the cost of borrowing, and you're raising I don't know. I'm a little bit. Oh, it's a little bit would be an understatement. So I understand where you're coming from, Jay. Like traders, betting a farm on it, but we'll see. The economy is weak. What if they're totally wrong? When you're seeing these significant revisions month after month, what if they're totally wrong? And we don't find that out until the next quarter. You're not going to get that revision with GDP. Not for a while. I don't know, guys. I don't know. I'm not comfortable. And housing, that doesn't even take into consideration the housing. It raised those rates. The last time they raised rates, they basically priced everyone who didn't have a credit score of 720 or higher. They basically, once they raised those rates and like FHAs went above a certain, really the rate above 3 is what just boxed everybody out, including veterans who were using first-time VA-assisted mortgage loans. I mean, they priced people out. If you had a 650 credit score, you could get that mortgage with, a 2.93% rate. Once they went higher and hit 4% because the Fed raised the rates last time, all those first-time buyers were booted out. When maybe here, because what happened? Maybe this will help explain what the Fed is thinking. Who knows? Investors gobbled up properties, and now they own them as rentals. That's what happened. Hedge funders, real estate moguls, they own that now. Putting together management companies, they'll rent that out. They'll hold on to those. They'll make a fortune. You got polled this week? Matt says, I got polled this week in Dallas-Fort Worth, is what he's talking about. I got polled in Dallas-Fort Worth this week on housing issues, asked if I support price and rent controls, the government funding down payments, and other left-wing projects. They're trying to figure out how to respond to this election cycle. Listen, I always recommend a couple books over and over again. The Crisis and Leviathan by Robert Hicks is a staple. You must read it. He's an economist, so it's very different than some of the other stuff that we've read. By the way, we're reading Kevin Phillips right now, The Emerging Republican Majority, in the book club. He's data heavy. This is more economic data heavy, right? And what he is arguing is, from an economist's point of view, you can actually, between the size of the private sector and the public sector, gross domestic product, gross income, he uses a ton of gauges. And what he argues is, when they create these economic crises, and it could be anything, war, economic crisis, when they create, because they are the ones who create them, it's a demon of our own design. When they create them, they then swoop in as your salvation. So it's their fault that a bunch of investment companies came in, bought houses that first-time buyers weren't able to buy because the Fed hiked them up past 4% and they were no longer qualified for that loan. That's their fault. They did that. And Ken Griffin and all the hedge funders, they now own these things. Management companies, BlackRock, you name it. They now own them. And they're going to shoot the price of your rent to the moon. They're in bed with these people. So they caused it. It benefited their friends who are scumbags of the earth. They drive up your rent, and then they're going to swoop in and they're going to argue that they have the fix for you. Vote for us. We'll pay your down payment. Vote for us. We'll put in rent control, even though that rent control will not even be remotely close to what it would have been in the private, if had the private sector been allowed to just work. Dynata was the company. They're left wing. There's no doubt about it. Quinnipiac, after many, many, many hours of criticism and rebuke from us, is now working with Dynata. They have a good panel. I don't know if they polled you a live interview, but they do offer assistance with live callers. So they have people, call centers, they'll help interview. They're all right. They're all right. The panel's all right. I had some issues with them, and I still think they're good. I just had some issues with them, and the amount of volume that we use, you have got to do better than what they were doing. But it doesn't matter anyway. We have the superior panel, and we handle our own agents that we don't need. We don't rent out call centers from people, not unless we absolutely have to. It was all online. Yeah, that's their panel. So they probably texted you or something, maybe, or they hit you up online with a something. Hey, take this survey, and then it led to it. Yeah. So I was born in New York City, Da Vinci. All right. So anyway, Michelle Obama, listen, I'm telling you, let me just say this because I know we're at 2:01 and I do have to go, but I'm trying to get through a bunch of the questions. Michelle Obama is a lazy woman. Michelle Obama is not a very well-liked person. When you meet her, she is not going to be able to make nicey with people. I'm telling you that. And she's doing well. Rich, they ran Joe Biden from the basement. How can they do it again? They will run Joe Biden from the basement again this time because he's an incumbent president. They'll hold these big things where they shelter him once in a while, but that's it. I just don't think that she is up for it. I don't. And I don't think she's going to go over as well as people think or are afraid she will. So there are potential, I don't want to say deep benchers because they're not, but there are potential benchers, alternatives to Joe Biden. I don't see them doing it. It's extra. Look, if there was going to be a real challenge to Joe Biden, we would have seen it already, and it would have already been funded, and they would not have moved around the calendar that they did. It's incredibly hard to pull party support away from a sitting incumbent president. And even though, I'm telling you, mark my words, it is an underreported story. New Hampshire is a bad omen for Joe Biden. When Donald Trump was a sitting president, he got 84.4% of the vote. Barack Obama, relatively similar. Ronald Reagan got 86 something. Even George W. Bush, when he was running, he got 82, I think, 82 and change. And then Herbert Walker Bush, obviously ran into the wall called Pat Buchanan. Jimmy Carter won it, but he won it very weak. And Ted Kennedy was his problem, which Ted Kennedy went out and declared it was a win after that. So, if you don't get 80 or above in New Hampshire, you have a base problem. And what part of that is Joe Biden does have a base problem. The other part is Nikki Haley took Joe Biden's votes. Not that they would ever again. They would never vote for Nikki Haley in a general. But there's a whole, this is what's happening here is novel. And we've never seen it before. So it's kind of uncharted waters. But let me put it this way. If the roles were reversed and Trump was the president, it would never work. What they're trying to do for Nikki Haley, if the roles were reversed and it was a different candidate and Republicans were trying to do it for a Democrat, they thought they needed to, they were using, like they're using Nikki Haley, the voters wouldn't do it. Not in numbers like that. They would go out and vote for Donald Trump. So the fact that they didn't shows you that the fact that they did abandon the chance to vote for their sitting president and instead voted for Nikki Haley to send some message or to try to stop Trump because they are afraid of Trump goes to show you that he doesn't have that motivation. And you got to wonder how many didn't show up because their turnout was still pathetic. How many didn't show up and how many won't show up in November? You got to wonder. It's going to be interesting to see whether that pattern happens and holds now that we're past Iowa and New Hampshire, 2 states that got screwed by Democrats this year. So is this low enthusiasm the result of them getting the shaft, or is this going to be a problem across the country? That's one of the main things we have to keep a lookout for. All right, don't forget, if you like the videos, like them, share them far and wide, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. If you're on YouTube right now, mosey your butt on over to Rumble. Hit the like button, share it, and of course, hit the notification button, and vice versa. Rumble Gunny. Like I said, this stuff really does matter. It's enormously helpful for 2 seconds of your time. And of course, the best place is Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. Locals, we're going to have that test real soon because I don't expect much more time needed for this API. So we're going to see how it goes. We have some testing windows this weekend. I'm going to try, even though Laura's not here, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to try to do it if we're ready. If one of the main tech gives me the green light, it should be really cool. I think you're going to like it. All right. Thanks, guys, as always, for watching. Don't forget, unfollow people who do not deserve your attention. All right. Have integrity, enough integrity and respect for yourself to not listen to the voices who are all alone, lost in the wilderness, like stray little poor puppies being led around by their ear, by the dark one, you know. And book club is on Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget. All right, nothing but love for you guys. Stay cool. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. Stay away from petroleum oil and wear deodorant.